Hey there, and welcome to the Choose to Think podcast. This is Victoria, and if there were a measurement for my enthusiasm about right now, well, the needle would be off the charts. Recently, I asked several humble and inspirational Christian leaders who operate with minds fired up for Christ to answer this question for me to share with my listeners, with you. The question was this: what is one toxic thought, it could be an enemy lie, a self-defeating thought, etc., that you have struggled with the most in your life personally, and how did you ultimately defeat that toxic thought? Okay, but get this. The challenge, however, was that I only gave them 90 seconds to answer and explain. And 6 brave entrepreneurs and kingdom influencers took me up on this task. So stay tuned to hear their amazing and encouraging answers that will leave you feeling energized and motivated to choose to think. But first, a few ministry reminders. I am so glad you're here. Stay tuned. Okay, I have 4 really quick announcements and reminders for you. Number 1, have you gotten your free ticket for the Identity in Jesus Christ Summit? It launches December 7th, and you do not want to miss out. I put the link in the show notes, but man, you're going to be amazed at the lineup of speakers. What better way to end out this year? Be sure to invite a friend or your small group from church. Number 2, and I've got you covered for the new year as well. Join me starting January 4th for the Fired Up Mind Challenge with yours truly hosting. The challenge will be live streamed to Facebook using Zoom. Okay, picture this. You have clarity of mind and focus. Your memory is sharp. You're taking good care of your body by what you eat. You're energetic and ready to take on 2021. Your heart overflows with gratitude. You awaken each day with a bounce in your step. You expect success and productivity in all areas of your life. You expect to advance the kingdom of God. You're mastering the art of taking thoughts captive. You control your emotions instead of letting them control you. You're ready to shake off 2020, and you're eager to reboot your brain, feel refreshed, and walk with a renewed mind. That is what my challenge is all about. Now, this challenge is valued at $297, but it's coming to you 100% free. Sign up today on my website at victoriadwalker.com. Okay, number 3, I have a favor to ask. If you enjoy the weekly episodes of this free podcast, Choose to Think, would you mind jumping over to Apple Podcasts so you can subscribe, light up the 5 stars, and write a 2-sentence review for me? If you have an iPhone, you actually already have the app right on your phone. It looks like a mic with a purple background. Just click on it and search for Choose to Think with the number 2. My goal was to get 50 reviews by the end of this year, and I have a bit of a ways to go, so please help me. Could you? And would you? If you're listening on other apps or sites, see if there's a way for you to make the podcast a favorite. And again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Finally, number 4, we're waiting for you over in our Fired Up Mind Facebook group. Speaking of, you may even be able to chat with my podcast guests in our group. There's a lot of energy there, and I would love to have you join this community. All these links are in the show notes. Okay, now let's rock and roll. Put your mind in high gear to help you process the heartfelt responses from everyday 21st century Christians just like you and I. Folks who have experienced hardships, obstacles, struggles in their lives, just like you and I. People who are learning to depend more and more on God's truth and to be led by His Spirit daily, just like you and I. I am so excited to introduce to you 6 individuals who make it a habit to choose to think. And by the way, all of their links are included in the show notes, as well as on my website blog at victoriadwalker.com. Be sure to opt in so that we can stay in touch. My first guest is Sherry White. Sherry is a blogger and writer who desires to encourage others in their journey of parenting, faith, and life in general. She wants others to know that we can be honest about our mess as we strive to live a Jesus life. Her stories are insightful, humorous, and full of truth. Sherry is a contributing writer for Her View from Home, which is an online lifestyle magazine for women. And her writing has also been published on Ha Ha's for Hoo Ha's, Love What Matters, Ellen Nation, and Little Things. Be sure to join her Facebook page called The Messy Christian, which shares all things from Jesus to parenting to humor, mess included. Sherry speaks on the clip today as she answers my question about how God meets us right where we are. Let's listen.
For most of my life, I thought being a Christian meant that you were perfect. I grew up in church, and somewhere along the line, I subscribed to this checklist Christianity. This made me very critical and judgmental of those who sinned, and it also made me hide from God when I sinned. So when I was 20 years old, I left church, vowing to come back when I was ready to be perfect. I felt like a hypocrite because I had sin in my life, and because I didn't know the Jesus who walked with sinners, I didn't know what to do with it. For 7 years, I didn't go to church. And then one day, God said, "You are far from me." And this was a wake-up call to me. The problem was, because I believed I had to be perfect to go back to Him, I was at a crossroads. I was struggling with sin in my life, and I didn't know how I could come back to Him while I was still struggling with these things. And then one day, my older sister said, "God meets us where we are." And this blew my mind. But I was desperate enough to believe it. So I prayed that God would meet me where I was in the middle of my sin and deliver me from it. Not only did God deliver me from a physical chain of addiction, but He delivered me from the lie of perfection that had kept me in chains all those years. This lie, that my salvation was about how perfect I was uprooted and replaced with the truth that my salvation is based on how perfect Jesus is. And oddly enough, this created desires for holiness in me that the pursuit of perfection never could.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for your boldness to share your story in an authentic and transparent way. Thank you for reminding us that we can come to God just as we are. And as the old hymn says, quote, "Just as I am, though tossed about, with many a conflict, many a doubt, fighting and fears within, without. O Lamb of God, I come, I come." My second guest is Christine Francois. Christine Francois has had the blessing of wearing many hats during her 30 plus years in business. First as a career banker with the leading financial services provider in the Caribbean, then as a corporate communications, marketing, and event management professional with one of the region's leading property management development companies. Oh, my lands. She's amazing. She attributes her resilience and ability to reinvent herself first to her faith in God. Her years of experience as a corporate event planner, her passion for people and animals, the drive to learn new things, and the blessing of family, colleagues, and friends who encourage her along the way. Let me just say that she lights up a room. I mean, that's the end of the story. She's beautiful. She just has a smile that will just melt your heart. Everybody needs a Christine and wants to get to know her. Trust me. We're podcasting buddies also. Christine has launched a podcast called Tall Tales, and that's TAILS, which connects with pet lovers, animal advocates, entrepreneurs, and stakeholders in the pet care industry. And she wants to share perspectives on the animal-human connections. She podcasts from Trinidad and Tobago. The Tall Tales podcast is scheduled to launch, I think it was yesterday, so be on the lookout for that. You can already find the trailer. So let's welcome Christine Francois.
For quite a long time, I've believed that I was a poor money manager. And I believe that this came about because when I got my first paycheck as a very young girl, I was 18 years old. The first thing that I did was I went out and I purchased a pair of boots. I had always wanted a pair of boots. I'd always been fascinated, and I was very happy with my purchase. However, when I got home and my father realized that I had purchased a pair of boots, he said to me that that was a very frivolous purchase. And I thought to myself that maybe I'm not a good money manager. And I think that just stuck with me. And so over the years, I've had money flow through my hands, of course, but never seemed to be able to save it. Well, what I've been able to do over the last few years is I've implemented the principles of tithing along with the use of positive affirmations. And by using these tactics, I've begun reframing my limited beliefs around money into positive ones. And now I believe I'm a very good money manager. I still do have quite a bit of work to do on myself, but I know I am on the right path. And I'm experiencing improved financial circumstances because of these tactics.
Thank you, Christine, for sharing your story of overcoming the false belief that you were a poor money manager. This is such a great example of how what we believe we actually become. I'm so grateful that you took back your thoughts and you stepped into managing your money as God led you. And I know you're going to go on and bless so many with the lessons that you have learned in your lifetime. So thank you for sharing. And before we go on, let's take a quick break from our sponsor. Guest number 3 is Brian MUTETE. Brian is a loving father, entrepreneur, kingdom influencer, and world changer who was born to serve. Doesn't that get you fired up too? Well, Brian comes to us from Australia, and he shares what Proverbs 38:9 mean to him. His message rings true on how God will give us just what we need and the quantity we need it and exactly when we need it. This is such an important life lesson. Brian has a passion for encouraging and helping people master life transitions, be it raising resilient children, recovering from significant trauma, or discovering your healthier self. Brian's knowledge, experience, and deeper understanding of the human psyche helps him listen and hear what can't be expressed in words. With a background in banking and finance, psychology, child development, and social work, he uses psychosocial principles to address pain points while guiding you to expedite practical solutions. Whatever life challenge, transition you may be facing right now, Brian can talk you through it. And here he is.
Hello. My name is Brian MUTETE, and I am a believer in God. But one thing that I've learned along the line is that sometimes we can misunderstand the Bible and we can live below what God has expected us or has planted in our hearts. For me, Proverbs chapter 30, verse 8 is one of those verses that has affected me for a very long time until probably 3 years ago when I realized that I was limiting what God can do through me. I'll read it to you. It says here from verse 8, "Remove falsehoods and lies far from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you and say, 'Who is the Lord?' Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my Lord." I had big dreams since I was a young boy, but because of this verse, which I so much professed to, God gave me what was enough just for me.
Thank you, Brian, for reminding us that God is our provider and that He will give us exactly what we need to live our lives, glorifying Him as we pursue our dreams. For me personally, I find a lot of comfort knowing that God judges my heart and He'll keep me in check with the purposes and plans He has for me. So thank you so much for sharing, Brian. Our next guest is JOANN WOLLOFF. JOANN coaches newbies in the online digital business who are just overwhelmed with the fire hose of information that's thrown at them. This is her offer. She will get you going with GrooveFunnels and hold your hand through the first 30 days, and she can also help you with affiliate marketing so that your investment is paid for life. In this clip, JOANN speaks of forgiveness. Her story reminds me of a C.S. Lewis saying, quote, "To be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you," end quote. I especially like how JOANN takes charge of the inner dialogue. Essentially, she's taking her thoughts captive. Here's JOANN.
Did you ever have to accept an apology that was never given? My limited belief that I overcame recently was believing my whole life that my siblings' feelings and wishes always came before my own. They were the voices in my head. They formed a committee in there. Last year, my dad needed assistance for 3 or 4 days in his home. I live 1,500 miles away, but I was at his doorstep the same day. The 3 or 4 days turned into 3 or 4 months. I would throw card parties where my siblings would all come and play with them. I had been the glue that kept their family together for years. Dad was in great spirits and seemed happy until the very last week before he passed. He just went downhill so fast. I called hospice in to help, but he was gone in no time at all. My immediate family has always been really tight for my 63 years, but somehow 2 of my siblings remembered seeing him recently very healthy, so they came to the conclusion that I must have killed him. They were spreading that rumor, and I was crushed. One sibling didn't like the way I was selling Dad's house and accused me of putting my wants and needs above the family, which I don't even know how to do. I just lost my best friend, and now the family I had put above myself was falling apart. I know they were hurting and they couldn't really believe it, but it still hurt because I let it. Since then, I decided to overcome my limited belief and take charge of the voices in my head. I became the chairman of that committee. I decided to forgive them, even if they didn't ask for forgiveness.
JOANN, I think we can all relate to our need to keep short accounts, so to speak, with our family and friends. Choosing forgiveness and by God's grace is essentially the mental and spiritual task that in the end sets us free. We appreciate your openness here as you aim to walk the higher ground. Next up is Adria Sullivan. Adria is a mental health therapist, business owner, fitness fanatic, Jesus seeker, and mom to 2 confident girls. I love that. She empowers stretched too thin mompreneurs find the time and energy to create a living legacy without sacrificing their marriages, their children's well-being, or their own health. She recently launched a growing Facebook group called Sanity Savers for Mompreneurs. You're going to really want to join that, all you moms out there. Well, Adria's answer to my question hits straight to the heart of what so many of us have struggled with in our journey. It's that old lie that we are just not important enough or we don't have what it takes to be successful just by being ourselves. She reminds us that our words have the power of life and death, and she challenges us to speak life. Welcome to the show, Adria.
Hi, Victoria. Adria Sullivan here. Thank you so much for having me on. Even as a mental health therapist and coach helping women defeat these negative thoughts, I too have struggled with the ridiculous thought of, I am not important enough. That leads to so many additional negative thoughts like, how could I help? Who would listen to me? But as I look back on my life and see where that thought was wired in my brain, I can eradicate it. It took a lot of time to search within myself and be vulnerable. But instead of continuing to allow that in my life, I searched out ways to disprove it. I have helped hundreds of people reach their goals by just being myself and caring about their success. I have a loving husband and 2 beautiful kiddos. To them, I'm important. To God, I'm important, just as I am today. Speaking life and truth into our lives is how we break free from the untrue and irrational thoughts. Speak life into your life every day, and that is your truth.
Adria, thank you so much for sharing from your heart and illustrating to us by your great example how truth can defeat the lies and how light dispels darkness every single time. One of my favorite Old Testament verses is in Deuteronomy, and it's choose life so that you and your children may live, something like that. And I just love that because we do have a choice. And in this case, there is the power of life and death in our tongues, in the words, in what we say, even in what we think. So therefore, yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to choose life. And finally, let me introduce you to Max Rooke. He's made a life's pursuit to discover what is the difference between good and great in every area of life. As a high achiever himself, Max had to personally overcome the overwhelming feelings of fear, stress, and anxiety that came with pursuing success in trying to close the gap between where he was and where he ultimately wanted to be. Can't you relate to that? I can. He learned that value does not come from what you do. It comes from who you are. And that is what he speaks about today. Max is from England, and currently he works as the associate head women's soccer coach at Pepperdine University in Malibu, California. He owns a private coaching business offering one-to-one transformational coaching, and he's a renowned motivational speaker and blogger. You will hear the energy in his voice as he addresses the issue of identity and knowing exactly who you are as God's amazing and beautiful workmanship. Here's Max.
Hi there, my name is Max Rooke, and what I quickly want to do here is share with you a brief message about something that I encounter a lot. So as a high performer, working in a high performance world, getting to work with a lot of athletes and teams, especially high profile female athletes, there's a lot of toxic thoughts that kind of go through our minds when we're in this world. And one of the things I think that happens a lot is this idea of being held captive by our current reality, right? We have this limiting vision of what's possible because we get stuck in our current reality. And I just want to tell you this, like, if you're listening here, it's not where you are, it's who you are, right? It's not about where you currently are, the current reality that you live in, really, but it's really about who you are going to become. It's about what God says you are. It's about who God made you to be. It's about who you are becoming because of the power that God gives you. And I'm just telling you, he made you for something special. He made you for something even bigger. He made you for something even more than the current reality you're in. So I just encourage you today to step out of where you are, step out of that current reality that's holding you back, and step into where you want to go. Step into the calling that God has for you, because when you do that, you open up boundless possibility, which is going to help you live into who you're meant to become and who God made you to be. All right? Always live life to the max. Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Max, thank you so much for encouraging us that this is a journey that we're on and that we can choose to focus on who God says we are. You know, it's a wonderful privilege that he's given us identity through his son. And that really is the key to everything. And that is indeed how we live life to the max. Did you enjoy this episode as much as I did? Oh, I love hearing from fellow sojourners who are on a quest to seek God, to proclaim his goodness, to serve others, to shine the light, and to be the salt. My heart's encouraged by all their reminders and by the ways they literally have taken thoughts captive, shifting them over to God's truth. The truth really does set us free and allows us all to be kingdom influencers. And let's always keep in mind that Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. And the merch designed for today's episode is Choose to Think, Reboot, Refresh, Renew. And you know, that's my prayer for you and for me. And you can find the link for the design in the show notes, as well as that's how you can get in touch with all these remarkable guests that have been on today's show. Shout them out and give them some love. Thank you again for tuning in. And until next week, Dios primero y que Dios te bendiga. Ciao.